everyone, welcome back to my channel. This video is for my April wrap-up. I read 8 books this month out of the 10 that were on my TBR, which came out to 2,409 pages. I had 2 5-star books, 5 4-star books, 1 3-star, and 2 DNFs, which was kind of disappointing, but this month was busy and I wanted to read things that I enjoyed reading when I had the time to read them. I'll quickly go over the 2 books that I DNF'd. The first one is All of This Is True by Ligia de Penaflor, I think is how you say her name. It starts out as a YA thriller mystery with this group of friends who are like super obsessed with this YA author named Fatima Rowe. And then something awful happens to one of the friends because of this obsession. His name is Jonah, and honestly, that's all I can tell you because I wasn't into it. The synopsis didn't even have that much to go off of. I really don't even know why I picked this book up in the first place. I think I had seen it on Book Outlet maybe, but I'm starting to think that YA mystery thrillers are just not the genre for me. So yeah, this was a DNF. I think I got about 50 pages into it. There's a lot of like interviews going on. As you can see, there's newspaper articles, stuff like that. So it was kind of a cool concept. I actually got about 70 pages into it and I just couldn't get into it because all of these kids, they just kind of seemed dumb and rich and like nothing could touch them. And even this ridiculous obsession with this author was taken to the extreme, and yeah, I just didn't have time for it. So I'm going to be giving this one away in an unhaul pretty soon. Hopefully someone else can enjoy it, but yeah, it just wasn't for me. The second book I DNF'd this month, I'm kind of disappointed about because I thought it was going to be great, and I still might actually give it a second chance, but that's The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This was a part of my end of April TBR where I was reading all the books with numbers in the title, and this is the last one I saved for my list, and I just could not get into this. I think I was about 100 pages in. I even tried the audiobook from Hoopla, and it's the writing style, it's very old English, it's set back in an older time. So yeah, maybe I'll get into this eventually, but it was hard to follow. There's already way too many characters, and even in the beginning, there's even a guest list for this masquerade that Evelyn Hardcastle is murdered in. And I feel like I will pick this up again eventually, but because I've heard so many good things about it, but this month it just wasn't doing it for me. I'm slightly disappointed, but we'll see if we get back to it. The first book that I read this month was The Hatchet by Gary Paulsen. I know this is a super old book, middle grade, but my fiance actually said that this was the one book that he read and absolutely loved, so I thought I would pick it up. It's super short. I think it's like 200 pages. And actually, I remember my 12-year-old cousin read it too, and she loved it, so I'm like, all right, I have to read this. I don't know how I missed this in middle school. So for those of you who have not heard of The Hatchet, this is about a 13-year-old boy who is going to visit his father because his parents are split up when the single-engine plane that he's taking crashes. Brian then finds himself as his only source of survival in the Canadian wilderness, and we follow the hardships he has to endure along with the many accomplishments and changes that he goes through during this journey. If you like survival stories, this is a really good one, especially for that middle grade age. What I loved about this book is that it encompasses the coming of age story in such a different way than what typical coming of age stories do. Obviously it's different because while he's growing, he's changing because he's trying to survive. Now, of course, I don't want to critique the writing style because it is obviously written for a younger audience. There were some really good descriptions and metaphors in here that I liked, but the writing style definitely irritated me a little because it was very repetitious, and because I read it aloud with my fiance, it was even more annoying because I was just repeating myself. But then again, I think of it, this is a 13-year-old boy writing this, so it makes sense, and I'm not going to critique anything in that category. So with that being said, I rated this a 5-star because I know my 13-year-old self, if I had read this, I really would have enjoyed it and given it a 5-star. And all in all, I did really enjoy the experience reading this, and my fiance did as well, so it was kind of cool for us to do together because he is not a reader by any means. So this next one that I read, I actually picked up on a Walmart bookshelf right before the quarantine started on a whim. It just looked cool, and I was pleasantly surprised with the experience that I had reading it. And this is one of the books that very few people have heard about and even talked about. I've never even heard of this from any other booktuber. So I didn't expect much going into it, but I was surprised at how it captured my attention. And also completely unintentional, it's about another plane crash. But this is called FreeFall by Jessica Barry. This time the plane crashes in the Colorado Rockies, and our main character, Allison, is not only forced to survive the crash and the unforgiving landscape that it plummeted her to, but also run from somebody. So it is told from two different points of view, and that's Allison and her mother, Maggie, who have not spoken in 2 years since the death of her father and her husband. So we're flipping back and forth between those point of views, and we're also kind of learning about the truth of Allison's life and what got her to where she was on that plane through Maggie's point of view. Because Maggie knows in her gut that her daughter is not dead, and so she's kind of trying to put the pieces together to finding her daughter. Maggie didn't know about Allison being engaged to a very handsome and wealthy man, and really about Allison's entire life after her father's passing. So we're bouncing back and forth from where Allison is trying to survive, and then Maggie trying to put the pieces together. And also in Allison's portions of the book, she's also giving us information of her life, but kind of like in a choppy way. So you're going back and forth between the 2 points of view and putting them together yourself, which is really fun as a reader. I love books that do that. So I rated this book a 4-star. I really have nothing bad to say about it. It just wasn't quite a 5-star for me. Again, I was pleasantly surprised with my overall experience. I really enjoyed it. I think Jessica Barry deserves a shout out, and I will be picking up more of her books, definitely. She has a really good way of capturing the audience and bringing us along through the journey. It was very fast-paced. The chapters are extremely short, like 2-3 pages, and each of the chapters left us off on a cliffhanger, no matter who was, no matter what point of view we were reading from. So I couldn't really guess what was happening until towards the end, and then I guess maybe that's where I docked a point, was the ending was kind of far-fetched. I think it could have been classified as corny a little bit, but as far as the action goes, it's packed, and as far as the underlying issues that you don't know about until you get into it, and the stuff going on there in Allison's secret life, was where everything kind of flips around, and that's what Maggie's trying to figure out. The story actually reminds me kind of something that Karen Slaughter would write. So it's kind of got where you think it's action and mystery and thriller, but then there's some like deep stuff in there, and some deep issues that have to come across for you to figure out what's happening and why Allison's running in the first place. It's also really interesting to see the mother-daughter relationship where it's been separated for so long. So I thought that kind of reminded me of Karen Slaughter as well. So if you're interested in picking this up, just know that it's action-packed and overall a gripping thriller that I really enjoyed. On to the next one, a more serious note. This one I had a hard time overall reading and sorting my thoughts for, but with all things considered, I am going to give it a 4 out of 5 stars this time. And that's My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. So My Dark Vanessa is about a 15-year-old girl named Vanessa who tells us her story involving a relationship with her 42-year-old English teacher named Mr. Joseph Strain. Now, throughout this book, we're flipping back and forth from 2001, where the relationship started, and then also 2017, current day, where Strain is now being accused for sexual misconduct by another former student named Taylor. Throughout the story, Vanessa's battling with the fact that she believes that Strain is the love of her life, and basically what's right and what's wrong, not only in her eyes, but in the eyes of others. We're traveling throughout her years from 2001 to 2017, and many things happen in her journey, in the relationship with Strain, through girlhood to then womanhood. This was a 4-star read for me because no matter who tells the story, it's a very tough subject to be told and to hear. But I do have to say that Russell captured the complete essence and every feeling to be had throughout the story with her writing alone. Like, the tone of the book is 100% this like melancholy. You feel sorry for her, but then you're kind of angry at her, and it's just depressive and unfortunate. I couldn't help but feel frustrated with Vanessa for a lot of this book, and I think that's intentional because it's almost like Stockholm Syndrome, where she's so warped by this relationship that she had with her teacher that her judgment calls and her decisions are just so off base because of it. By the end of this book, I qualified Vanessa as an unlikable character, which I do think is probably intentional to really grasp the situation and the effects that the trauma had on her and her life and what her life turned into. So with that being said, it is a very, very sad, hard-hitting, and touching story. I feel like the majority of the book is filled with her conflicting feelings and her contradicting herself. And the one line that stood out to me that I feel like encompasses the relationship, and that's when she says, "I strip myself of the fantasy. I tell myself that when we met, he was bored and losing his youth. I was young and adored him. An older man using a girl to feel better about himself. How easily the story becomes a cliche if you look at it without the soft focus of a romance." Now, I feel like that's where she was so set on this being a romance, where she kind of takes into consideration the whole of the story and encompasses her emotions and really comes to terms with the fact that, like, this wasn't okay. Not to say that that's what happens, because this is a spoiler-free video, but like I said, there are many contradicting parts of Vanessa's character, so you'll find that out if you choose to read this. Just be mindful that it is a very hard and somewhat disturbing read. So taking in the context of this book, I feel like saying that I enjoyed it would be kind of wrong, but to say that it was well written and an extremely tough task to accomplish given the context. Kate Elizabeth Russell nailed it, and I did feel a lot of emotions when reading it, which I feel like is the main purpose of a hard-hitting psychological fiction. So job well done, and I do recommend it if you have the stomach for such content. So the next book I don't have a physical copy of. I do plan on buying it. I received the ARC from NetGalley, so it's on my e-reader, and that's Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. This is a typical mother loses son, but what begins a missing child case ends with more secrets unraveled. The synopsis is actually pretty vague, because they're all those unraveled secrets you don't find out until you read the book. It does happen quickly. This isn't just about a missing child. Like, there are so many other things, and actually that doesn't even really take precedence over the book. Like, the entire topic is actually something else, in my opinion, which threw me off in the beginning. I had a hard time getting through it because I was like, why are they, like, what's gonna happen with the son? How is this gonna unfold? But with that being said, it was very entertaining, thrilling for sure. I think Hillier did a wonderful job, and I really look forward to reading anything more that she writes. Her writing style is right up my alley. The details, the description, the dialogue, every emotion she described when she was going through the things or when reveals happened were spot on. Like, I could feel those when she was writing, which is always really exciting as a reader because you want that emotion to come through the pages. Other than that, it was enthralling, twisting, thrilling. Reveals were worth every bit, even though I kind of started to catch on. Still going through the process and putting the puzzle pieces together was a fun and entertaining experience. The next few I'm going to talk about are for the number challenge that I did for myself, reading every book on my shelf that has a number in it. And I did this the last 2 weeks of April, so I kind of had to cram everything in. The first one I bought on my Kindle, and that's 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. For those of you who don't know, Peter Swanson is one of my favorite thriller writers, and with the exception of this book, I have given all of his 5 stars. 8 Perfect Murders is a thriller about a bookstore owner named Malcolm, who years ago compiled this list of what he believes to be 8 perfect literary murders. And he writes this article about what they are and why he felt they were so well orchestrated. Sometime after this article is written, an FBI agent approaches Malcolm to discuss these murders that are occurring that seem to match his list, like copycat style. And so the story goes on to investigate the similarities and discovers some crazy stuff. As always, Peter Swanson really delivers with his writing style. I absolutely love his books in the way that he exposes the narrators' history and their secrets. And he does it in such a way that keeps the reader gripped, in my opinion. He'll like flash back and forth, but he does it so tastefully that it flows so well. And I feel like 90% of the time his narrators are either unreliable or they have some really crazy stuff that happened in their past that makes them like kind of not a likable person. Sometimes in Peter Swanson's books, you're like, is he good or is he bad? I don't know. And it's kind of like a judgment moral issue. And he always just delivers everything so smoothly without overkill, so much detail without overkill. And I love that about him. I absolutely love his writing style, so I will never dock any of my points based off of that. With how much I love Peter Swanson, this book just did not do it for me. And I'm so disappointed to say that because I was looking forward to reading this for as soon as I heard it came out. I do have to say, I did get through it really fast, and it's weird because there's not much I didn't like about it. It just didn't have that thrilling aspect that I'm so used to with his writing. I realized that I wasn't half invested in this book as much as I am with his other stuff. When I heard about the synopsis from other booktubers, I was stoked because it sounds like something really, really cool to read. It even sounds like a really good movie. It kind of reminds me of like a Law and Order like episode. So that was completely enthralling. I was totally into it, totally invested, and then I read like the first 7 or 8 chapters and I was like, oh man, this just isn't it for me. I feel like it's also important to mention that if you do plan to read those 8 books on his best murder list, watch out because there are a ton of spoilers in this book for those books. Be mindful of that. The next one is my 5-star book, probably my second favorite book of the year, and that's The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I absolutely adored Daisy Jones and the Six, and so I ordered 2 more of her books, and this was the second one, and it happened to have a number in the title, so it was perfect for this TBR. And I can't say enough how much I love this one and Daisy Jones. So for a quick summary, Monique Grant is a small-time magazine reporter who takes on the daunting task of interviewing the reclusive Hollywood icon Evelyn Hugo, who is finally ready to share her truth about the 7 marriages she was in and all the bits of scandal and glamour that weaved in between those years. So it's another historical fiction. Almost reminds me of The Notebook, if you've seen the movie or read Nicholas Sparks' book, because Noah's rehashing the story to his wife, who you find out in the end. And this is kind of what Evelyn Hugo is doing in the book. She's giving her Monique all this information on her life, and she's interviewing her, and then it flips back to present day and you see what she's doing, in her present day. So what I really loved about it is that it was Evelyn Hugo. It was her words, her emotions, her time, her story, and then it flicks back to Monique and her everyday life, her personal struggles, and her feelings for Evelyn's tellings. While Daisy and Jones and the Six ended up as a tearjerker for me, I did not expect that from this, and I cried from this. It was just so good because there are some really sad parts to it. I literally finished this in a day. I could not put it down. I'm just so unbelievably amazed by Taylor Jenkins Reid and how she can create these fictional historical icons, and I was just beyond shocked that she could do it 2 times. So with the synopsis in mind, it definitely sounds fun and airy, but there are some very hard-hitting topics in here. It is described as a romance novel, psychological fiction, and LGBT literature. So there are some things in here that you don't expect, which I was pleasantly surprised to really enjoy. There's a reveal in here at the end that you're waiting and waiting and waiting to find out, and when it comes out, it's just truly shattering, and it just makes the whole book what it is. So obviously this is a 5-star for me. Not only did I find another favorite book, but I've officially found one of my favorite authors, and that's Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have just fallen so deeply in love with her writing, and her choice in storytelling. And I seriously just have to say, like, thank you for writing such amazing stories. And it just reconfirms my love for reading, and this is why I pick up books and I spend so much time with my nose in a book, because of the experiences like these. And she gives me the worst book hangover, I have to say, because I have not read anything since then that I'm completely in love with, and I'm having like withdrawals from her. I did just pick up One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, so I'm gonna be trying to read that one this month, but I'm not sure if I want to do the whole book hangover thing again, so let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed that one as much as Daisy Jones and Evelyn Hugo. The next one for the number TBR that I did has been sitting on my shelf for forever. This is one of the first thrillers that I bought, and I finally jumped into it. That's The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torre. This is a dark and edgy thriller about a girl named Deanna who has been a recluse for 3 years now. She's literally obsessed with the idea of murdering people, and she keeps herself away to save others. And because she's shut in, she has to make a life, obviously, get money and whatnot. So she utilizes the internet in every way she possibly can, getting food, bottled water, tons and tons of packages a day, and she makes her money by being a cyber sex worker, about 18 hours a day. The cyber sex topic as a huge part of the book. Most of the chapters start out, are the ones that are in her perspective, start out with a little piece of information about the different kind of fantasies that men and women have when they're doing these cyber sex chats. And Deanna will literally do anything and everything that her customers ask of her. And there's one customer in particular that makes her extremely uncomfortable with the demands and the scenario that he wants her to play out. And because of this, it might actually be the reason she leaves her apartment, because she feels that his fantasies will drive him to hurt someone. So with cybersex being her occupation, there is a ton of detailed scenes, which would usually make me DNF a book, but it actually wasn't bad in this case. From my understanding, A.R. Torre did a lot of research and really delved into the world of cybersex before writing this, and I think she did an excellent job of capturing what it's about and that lifestyle without overdoing it. There are some trigger warnings for pedophilia, so just be mindful in that. But my overall thoughts, it was strange reading from this character's point of view and trying to grapple with the concept that she wants to physically hurt people. It's very strange and uncharted territory. I absolutely love documentaries, and it kind of reminded me of like In the Mind of a Killer. So I gave this book a 4-star out of 5. I read it really quickly and I was entertained the entire time. I think that the writing was done really well, and that Torre did a great job in bringing us into the mind of a person with this condition, as well as introducing us to the world of cybersex. So I definitely recommend this if you're trying to branch out to a different kind of field of thrillers, because this is 100% different from anything I've ever read before, and it's cool to kind of take like a very sick individual who could, I guess, be qualified as a bad person and turn them into a heroine, which was kind of the case in this story. So yeah, I hope you pick it up if you're looking for something different, out of the box, and thrilling. And the last one I have for my number challenge, I read a long time ago. I think I was in high school, and I gave it a 5-star back then. Now I give it a 4-star, but that's 20 Boys Summer by Sarah Ockler. I remember absolutely loving this book in high school, and I could totally see why as rereading it. It's definitely generated towards that age group, that audience. But 20 Boys Summer is about two best friends, Anna and Frankie, and they're taking Frankie's family's annual trip to Zanzibar Bay, out in California near San Francisco, and they plan to date or meet 20 boys for the whole summer, like a new boy every day. They're both 16 years old. And Frankie has this mission to get Anna to lose her virginity on this trip. Now, what Frankie doesn't know is that Anna was in love once before, but she promised to keep it a secret because the person that she was in love with was Frankie's older brother, Matt. Matt, Anna, and Frankie grew up as best friends, and Matt unfortunately dies in a car accident that they were all in, and pretty much devastates Frankie, her family, and obviously Anna too. And the hard-hitting topic in here is that Anna was in love with Matt, but nobody else in her life knows, and so she has to keep that a secret because she feels devoted to Matt and to their secret. And also she's struggling with grief in herself, but she's also taking the role of taking care of Frankie and being her shoulder and being there while she grieves. And so on this vacation, they're planning to have a good time, let it all out, let loose, and they do end up meeting a couple boys. And Anna really struggles with the fact that Matt was her first love, and how does she move on without forgetting him, but also she never got that time to grieve herself. So that's definitely like the hardest part of the book, especially at the end, because all the while, you know, Anna's keeping the secret from her best friend, and parts of you feel like really bad for Anna, like just tell her, but then parts of you feel bad for Frankie too, because it is her big brother and that's a big secret and it's her best friend. So there's a lot of sad topics in this. It is a really fun book. It definitely makes you want to go to the beach. The description is really great. What I think the star rating that was lost was from just, it was really juvenile, sophomoric. Like, I did love it back then, but there were some inconsistencies, and the attitudes of Frankie as a 16-year-old was kind of annoying. Frankie's this get all dolled up to go down to the beach, and she tries to change Anna, and Anna's like, take one for the team, take one for the team. And it's just, it gets a little exhausting how assertive Frankie is and how much Anna just takes it. But with that being said, this will still always go down as one of my favorite YA books of all time. I don't regret rereading this. It only took me a couple days, and I still do have a soft spot in my heart for it. And I absolutely love the book cover, and I feel like maybe it shouldn't be called 20 Boy Summer, in my opinion. I probably would have renamed it to do with something with the sea glass, because that's a really important part in the book. The older brother Matt collects the sea glass and he makes jewelry out of it and stuff, and that's a very sentimental thing for all of them. So yeah, I absolutely love the cover, and it's just really cute. And I feel like this is definitely worth reading for high school students, but even, you know, as an adult, I did enjoy it. It was fun. It brought me back, and it brought me to summer, which is always nice. Okay guys, thanks for sticking with me. Those are all the books I have to talk about today. I did miss one of the number books from my personal challenge, but honestly, I wasn't into it. That's the 13-Minute Murder by James Patterson. I started to kind of get into it, but I might pick it up at a later date because it was a gift, so I feel bad for not reading it, but that's the only one that didn't make it. And then of course I'm super disappointed in not being able to read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. I may try to pick that up again. So thanks for watching. As usual, I'm going to be posting a 3 Thriller Thursday for you guys tomorrow as well. I hope you're all enjoying the nice weather. If you have nice weather, I've been sunburning like crazy, not expecting it. But thanks for stopping by, and I will talk to you again soon. See you later. Bye.